by Riverside.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome into a brand new episode of the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Codd, and welcome 2025 to you and all the NASCAR fans out there in this world, man. I am stoked, man. I am stoked. We're finally here. NASCAR is right around the corner. If you're watching Fox, watching the NFL playoffs, they were advertising Daytona 500. Super exciting stuff coming up. The one thing I got to say is, of course, I'm an avid Eagles fan, so of course this season's going on pretty damn well for myself. But as a NASCAR fan, first, I will say this: I think the most miserable time of the year is when the checker flags drop in Phoenix all the way for the wait until Daytona, right? So this month we're starting to see some racing come into play. We had the Chili Bowl a couple weeks ago. We had the ARCA Menard Series testing down in Daytona. But then we're going to get the 24-hour Le Mans coming up in a few weeks. And then we're going to, of course, have Speed Weeks and, of course, the Clash at Bowman Gray Stadium. So super exciting. Like I said, we had to take some time off. I had to rest that voice. And again, root for the Eagles. I'm sorry for everybody who hates them. But again, I hope everyone enjoyed their wonderful holiday season. I'm hoping that everyone was safe during the new year. I'm super ecstatic to be back with all y'all for another successful NASCAR Cup Series season. So going into the NASCAR Cup Series season in 2025, basically until the green flag drops at Daytona, what we're going to be doing on this podcast is kind of a couple series of episodes, basically previewing each manufacturer leading up to Daytona, right? But before that, it'll all be towards the Clash, and then of course, what we'll be doing is a power rankings as we head into Daytona. So bear with us. I hope you guys are all happy and excited, like I am. Like I said, I just want to wish everybody a happy holiday. I hope everything was great with all of you as well. So, before we get started tonight on tonight's episode, I just wanted to break down exactly what kind of happened. I know our Facebook page kind of posted some stuff that happened with a NASCAR group on Facebook, and we posted it. We were very aware of us probably going to have to explain what occurred and what happened during the holiday season. We obviously in the slow time of the NASCAR season, a lot of these Facebook pages. Well, no, I shouldn't say a lot because there's a lot of them are well ran and very mature, but there are some that are not well ran and mature enough to do stuff in the off season. So we were, we were the podcast was in a Facebook page. We were, eager to always share our episodes with the fans. And I want to say right around probably after Phoenix, the Facebook page kind of got very, very, very political and very, very odd, to say the least. And we continue supporting their Facebook page because that's what we want to do as NASCAR fans. Is, of course, we're not trying to kill anyone's ambitions of being an influencer in the sport or anything like that. What we're trying to do is trying to help each other and help promote the sport as well. Unfortunately, when I first started, or well, not unfortunately on my end, but when I first started this podcast, the one thing I made very clear was I will not get political with anybody on this podcast because I'm not trying to use my voice and hide behind NASCAR to share political agendas or propaganda. And so, like I said, with this Facebook page for a while, and like I said, it got very, very weird. And it kind of felt very scammy esque, like a lot of scam, a lot of bots. And we kind of called them out on New Year's and it was just like, hey, look, this is NASCAR. And I was telling fans, like, if you, because there's a bunch of fans that were riled up and started to argue with everybody on New Year's. I said, listen, if you want to follow a NASCAR Facebook page that does not deal with politics or scams or bots, it's ran by myself. Well, come on in, come on through. And like I said, an anonymous post claimed that they were an admin, said that our podcast, Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast, stunk and was horrible. And again, I have no problem with anyone thinking that the podcast is bad. I don't care. That's completely fine. We appreciate you just listening and hearing our voice, giving us a shot. That's all I care about. What we were asking for was feedback because, again, I'm kind of a perfectionist. I want to make sure the show is always progressing into new heights. And we were ghosted essentially. So I kind of went back to the Facebook group or the Facebook admins and just said, listen, it's politics. It's the politics that we're leaving this Facebook group. And they didn't care, nothing like that. They didn't clean it up. So we left the group. And I just wanted to give our fans a notice on why we don't post stuff in that Facebook page anymore. We feel like there is a lot more well ran Facebook pages with great people, great aspirations, and just good chatter among NASCAR fans. And it's a shame because I think that Facebook page has a lot of good people posting inside of it. And I think they have a lot of good NASCAR fans inside that group that we always want to touch base with. But as somebody who, again, politics can destroy anybody and start any fight, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle it is. We refuse to engage in that nonsense. We refuse to engage in that because NASCAR is meant for everybody. NASCAR is meant for everybody. That's how I feel. I've always felt that way. I want to bring more eyes onto the sport and have an opportunity to have fun with new fans and reaching out. So that's why we ended our connection with that Facebook page. And again, if you are listening and watching us, we have a bunch of NASCAR Facebook pages that we will definitely 1000% recommend because they are well ran and a lot of fun to be involved with. So that's the few words I wanted to say on that. Appreciate everyone for the support. Like I said, it was nothing about them saying the podcast sucks. Don't care about that whatsoever. It's the fact that you were being scams and bots, and I just didn't care for that anymore, and it got way too political. So thanks for bearing with us. Appreciate the comments, kind words, support, all that type of stuff. But that's what I just wanted to share it on air, and it's going to be water under the bridge after tonight. So all right, few show announcements. Like I said, 2025. We're taking the green flag tonight on the 2025 NASCAR season. We are stoked. I think you can hear it in my voice. I've been saying it for the last 6 minutes. Not how excited I am about 2025. Show announcements. So, well, we kind of over the off season kind of confirmed what races we will be attending to. Right now, we have 2 on the board. There might be some different changes in my life that are coming up. And what I want to end up doing is maybe going to a couple more races. But as of right now, I have 2 locked down with the Broken Wheel Bearing podcast. That is going to be Dover on July 20th, 2025. We'll be down at the Monster Mile. It's my first time down at that track since 2019. So it's a good time of the year. Like I said, we're northeast corner of Pennsylvania NASCAR podcast. So we know the weather pretty well in this area. We know that Dover's not the best with weather when it was in May, but we'll be back down there because of the change of date on July 20th. So super excited to be back down there with the fans at Dover. Finally, the other one that was confirmed, we told you guys after the tailgate last year, we're doing it again. We'll be up at Pocono June 22nd for our annual Broken Wheel Bearing podcast tailgate. So we had a lot of fun last year with a lot of fans. Looking forward to doing it again. So those are the 2 that are going to be confirmed. And we look forward to hopefully seeing some of you as well up at those 2 tracks. I'm hoping one more track can come through. Bear with us. All right, and final show announcement tonight for the Broken Wheel Bearing podcast. So I'm a big fan of Barstool Sports, and I think that they did something pretty cool with John Gruden this past season when they hired him as Barstool. They have the Shred Line with Barstool Sports, so we're actually going to be kind of incorporating something similar to that. We're not going to be doing the Shred Line. It's not going to be called the Shred Line, but it's going to be the Blown Tire Text Line. So at the end of the race, if you're pissed off at your favorite driver, your favorite crew chief, Mother Nature, the fan that you couldn't stand at the racetrack, we'll have a text number out there after every single race. This text line will not be up and running until after Bowman Gray at the Clash. So we're not going to be doing blown tire lines right now because there's nothing really to complain about. I mean, if you do have something to complain about, feel free to put it on YouTube and hopefully I get to it in the middle of the episode. But we will be doing something, like I said, we'll be doing something similar with a blown tire line. Text us after every event, race. Again, if you hate the broadcast so much, I know Amazon Prime is going to have broadcasts this year. We are willing to listen to you bitch and complain about some of these broadcasts. Again, it would be the Blue Entire line that will be set up and running after Bowman Gray. So, a couple show announcements, like I said, as we go into 2025 in a new year. And again, we always want to hear from you, the voice of the fan of NASCAR. So, let's take the green and white checker on some show announcements. Let's head into some fast headliners, courtesy of jski.com. It's been a while with all you about these. So let's start off with Helio Castroneves is locked into the Daytona 500 through open exemption provisional. Helio Castroneves and Trackhouse Racing intend to utilize NASCAR's new open exemption provisional to secure a starting spot in the 2025 Daytona 500, NASCAR confirmed on Friday. Announced Friday, among numerous competition updates ahead of the 2025 season, the open exemption provisional provides guaranteed starting position for world-class drivers who enter a NASCAR Cup Series race. The provisional is similar to a promoter's choice provisional. We'll be talking about a little bit of that in a little bit in this episode as well. Headliner number 2, Ross Chastain, Shane Van Gisbergen to run 9 Xfinity races for Junior Motorsports. Those races announced for Chastain, he'll be in 5 of them, starting at the Circuits of the Americas, followed up by Darlington in April, Nashville in May, Dover in July, and Iowa in August. Shane Van Gisbergen will run 4 times, beginning at the Mexico Street Course, or Mexico, combined Chicago Street Course and Mexico. Sorry about that. He'll be racing at Mexico. He'll be racing at the Chicago Street Course. He'll be racing at Sonoma, and he'll be racing at Watkins Glen. So he's got all road courses for Junior Motorsports, which, I'm going to be honest with you, that could be a pretty damn clean sweep for Shane Van Gisbergen. Anthony Alfredo will be driving for Beard Motorsports in the Daytona 500. The Beard Motorsports car that was pretty much used to be ran by Brendan Gaughan. It looks like Anthony Alfredo looks like he's going to be the main man piloting that car for the super speedways in the future. Corey Day, if you're a prospect fan, Corey Day is going to be competing in select truck and ARCA races for Spire Motorsports. Spire Motorsports will field HendrickCars.com Chevrolets in select NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series and ARCA Menard Series races in 2025 for open wheel standout and Hendrick Motorsports driver Corey Day. Day, who is 19 years old, will compete in 4 ARCA Menards races behind the wheel of the number 77 Chevrolet, beginning with the February 15th Daytona ARCA 200 at Daytona International Speedway. His 8 Craftsman Truck Series schedule will include the following: Vegas in March, Homestead in March, Martinsville in March, Bristol in April, Rockingham in April, Nashville in May, Indy Raceway Park in July, Darlington in August. So if you're a Corey Day fan, a couple good tracks that he's going to be racing at. I might be locking myself maybe into that Rockingham slot. Zep, sponsoring Noah Gragson at Atlanta and Daytona. Zep is Zep is the go-to cleaning brand for professionals and is recognized as a leading innovator, producer, and distributor of maintenance, cleaning, and sanitation solutions. So Zep, as you guys remember, Zep was kind of with Stewart-Haas Racing last year in 2024. Well, Stewart-Haas Racing no longer exists, which is still weird to say. Zep looks like it will be following Noah Gragson over to Front Row Motorsports. Amazon Prime, considering the fact we're going to have people complaining about it in, 5 months? Amazon Prime will be sponsoring Chase Elliott in 3 races annually through 2027. Amazon Prime has joined Hendrick Motorsports as a new sponsor of driver Chase Elliott and his number 9 NASCAR Cup Series team through 2027. I really kind of like this partnership. You're kind of putting a new product out there in a sport that a lot of people don't want a lot of change in. Put it on the most popular driver's car. Love the partnership. And finally, the fast headliner tonight is going to be MillerTech, sponsoring Noah Gragson in 3 races. Front Row Motorsports and MillerTech have announced an exciting partnership that will see the premium lithium battery company partner with Noah Gragson and the number 4 Ford Mustang team during the 2025 season. So, it looks like Noah Gragson has kind of picked up some of those left behind sponsorships that were left when Stuart Haas Racing exited the sport. He ends up taking on Miller Tech and Zep, who I believe Miller Tech was with Noah Gregson anyways last year when he was on the 10. But I know Zepp was with Chase Briscoe. So a couple sponsorships going from Stuart Haas over to Front Row Motorsports. And again, that's all fast headliners courtesy of jski.com. Follow them on X, Web, or Facebook. Any one of them. Super insightful. I think as a NASCAR fan, any NASCAR fan that's listening, I believe you guys already know the deal. jski.com is a good source. All right. So wrapping up fast headliners. Article of the week. This one's going to be pretty interesting. We're going to kind of brief this one over. We'll post this article on our Facebook page for anyone that wants to go in depth. The article of the week from the Broken Wheel Bearing podcast is new provisional spot added to NASCAR Cup Series field. Damaged vehicle policy revised. And again, this article is courtesy of Zach Albert of NASCAR.com. So, first things first, as you heard in the fast headliners, open exemption provisional. The open exemption provisional rule was one of a handful of changes issued in a rulebook bulletin to the NASCAR industry this past Friday. Other updates were made to the Cup Series damaged vehicle policy, the process for granting waivers for playoff eligibility, and penalties for rule violations by manufacturers. So, the main three I want to discuss with everybody tonight. Damaged vehicle policy, which I believe this is going to be a change. I think all NASCAR fans, no matter what the age is, as a purist of the sport, this is a sensational rule change. I love it. The other one I have an opinion on, and that's the playoff eligibility. We'll get to that in a second. So let's start off with the open exemption provisional. Competition officials compared a new provisional spot to the promoter's choice provisional that's used in some forms of short track racing to guarantee a starting spot for a special or invited entrant. The open exemption provisional rule, which will be, its acronym is OEP, would only become a factor if the entry list exceeded the Cup Series starting field maximum of 40 cars. And eligible drivers would need pre-approval by NASCAR on a case-to-case basis, with racing experience and accolades carrying significant weight. So I like this rule a lot that they changed. We're going to see it in play right away with Helio Castroneves. I've always said I want the best drivers in the most premier races in this world, right? Obviously, we will not be sending top line NASCAR drivers over to Monaco because, again, the time difference, we're not going to be racing their type of race just because it's a different style, but there's a lot of money that goes into Monaco. It's unrealistic for them to jump from America over to Europe for that race. But what I will say is I think that this is very good for a lot of drivers like IndyCar. A couple of years ago, we saw Travis Pastrana. So we're opening ourselves up to world-class motorsport athletes, which I love. I love that idea. This is going to be really cool. I like how it's going to be kind of like, it's almost going to be like a big ticket item, right? The only races I really see this provisional being placed in, one is going to be Daytona, of course, because we're going to have more cars probably try to enter the race than the maximum field allows. But I do like the idea because if there is another race down the road, like the Chicago Street Course that we run in 2025, we may be able to get a couple more, historical figures of auto racing to run this race. So that's rule number one. I completely love. Rule number two is the DVP. NASCAR officials, according to an article by Zach Albert, NASCAR officials updated the damaged vehicle policy for the Cup Series starting this season, adjusting the rule that damaged cars that are either driven or towed to the garage will be out of the race. Starting in 2025, cars will be permitted to continue in the race after repairs in the garage. I love this. We're going to stop right there. Love it. First thing that came to my mind when I read that rule change, Joey Logano, Pocono, 2023. Ends up getting spun out in turn one. Ends up having a flat. Is literally complaining and saying, do not tow me back to the garage. Do not tow me. just pushed me back to the garage. I mean, obviously there was explicits that were used. I'm not going to share it on air, but in that instance, he was 100% right. He gets towed back to the garage. That's it. Race is over. For me, why I like this is because if you're able to fix the vehicle, which I think there was some instances in my mind where we saw drivers since the DVP got put in place that okay, old NASCAR rules, they're back on the track in what, 40, 50 they'll be back on the track. It's going to be a while, but maybe 40, 50, 60 laps. Um Here's one for like I feel like a tow link can be fixed if they just take it back to the garage. And with the DVP, I liked it because it was competitive, but at the same time, I feel like we were just like, yeah, like okay, we're just automatically eliminating people out of a race. I want to see cars go back out on the track after they're fixed. I want to see cars get out there. And I want them to be able to compete for points, right? If someone blows an engine or is completely wiped out of the race, right? And we see wrecks all the time that we know damn well the garage ain't fixing it. I want drivers that were in a wreck or something like that that can get the car fixed go back out there. They should not automatically be DNF'd because the DVP clock said it. So I love this rule change. So happy with NASCAR. Great job. You reversed the DVP clock. And again, if a car is able to go to the garage, get fixed, put it back on the track, hell yeah. Who doesn't miss a good old car running around in freaking duct tape, dude? That's what NASCAR is all about, right? I'm kidding, but great job by NASCAR on that one. So the third rule change that I was not a fan of, and there was rumors about it that was going to happen at the end of 2024. Realistically, it was going to happen after an event last year. We'll get in a second. But that this new rule change is about the waivers and playoff eligibility. According to an article by Zach Albert, final update. If competition officials grant a waiver for playoff eligibility, in some circumstances, that driver will forfeit any playoff points accumulated in the regular season. Such a driver would start the playoffs with a baseline maximum of 2,000 points in the reset standings. Playoff points would be forfeited if a waiver is guaranteed after a suspension or if a driver chooses to skip a race. Playoff points would not be forfeited in the event of medical absence, missing a race for the birth of a child or a family emergency, or if age restrictions prevent a driver from racing a full season. NASCAR, you batted 666. The first rule was great, kind of like an open invitation, big ticket item, having world-class athletes, drivers drive on in these races. The second rule, the DVP, you fixed it. That was incredible. We're finally going to see duct tape all over the cars again and getting as many points as they can, even though their day is completely shot. Love to see it, right? If I go down to a race, Chase Elliott DNFs or Kyle Busch DNFs, or I'm not DNF, excuse me. Kyle Busch or Chase Elliott get into an issue, they need to go to the garage. There's no more DVP clock. I don't have to leave when they get out of the race. I can continue watching because they might be back on the track in 75 something laps. But NASCAR, you screwed up with this damn playoff eligibility waiver nonsense again. I had friends text me about this. They go, Matt, what do you think about it? It's bullshit. It's straight up bullshit, man. That rule got put in place because they were headhunting one driver, Kyle Larson. They headhunted Kyle Larson because NASCAR, again, loved the sport, loved the people involved in it, but NASCAR senior leadership is straight up insecure about their own sport. They are so scared after what we saw on Memorial Day in 2024, and they are so pissed off that Kyle Larson chose to run the Indy 500 after the rain delay out in Indy instead of flying from Indianapolis down to Charlotte. And again, this rule, we knew this was probably going to go in play with the way NASCAR was acting with the playoff eligibility waiver. I mean, it took them almost a whole week. In some, again, playoff points would be forfeited if a waiver in the event, or if a waiver is granted after a suspension, or if a driver chooses to skip a race. So if you're a Chase Elliott fan, here's an example of this, right? 2023, he gets the waiver after the suspension, but he has no playoff points. He couldn't even get in on points with this new rule. I understand that we need some checks and balances, but I kind of feel like NASCAR is headhunting here. And it all comes back down to because they are pissed off that Kyle Larson chose to run Indy's event and not NASCAR's event on the same day. And it's embarrassing to them. Even though, God forbid, Kyle Larson wins that race in Indianapolis after never running an Indy car in his entire life, he wins that race in Indy. More people will be like, holy shit, this driver's incredible. Where do I get to watch him even more? But instead, they get all butthurt that he wasn't in Charlotte that night. And to be honest with you, I got to be, and I'll say this too, and there's a lot of beat writers I respect and I love in the NASCAR industry, and there's a lot of sources that I use, but there's also a lot of people that have stupid opinions and sit there and cry and complain that he chose to stay in Indy. Are we going to blame Rick Hendrick and Jeff Gordon for staying in Indy with him? They were out there. They both had. I mean, Hendrick Motorsports had 4 drivers in Charlotte. And this is why people get mad at NASCAR. You're headhunting now. And if I'm Kyle Larson's looking at attempting the 2025 race again, if I'm Larson and if I'm Hendrick Motorsports, I got to sit there and go, Kyle, this might not be a good idea if you won that championship. God forbid there's a rain delay. But the other thing, too, and it makes me sad, is that NASCAR did this because there was a lot of money and a lot of time and efforts made for Kyle Larson to have a car in that race. His sponsor in that race was HendrickCars.com. Again, I think NASCAR did a sensational job with the open provision rule. I think that's incredible. I think they did a great job with the DVP, rechanging that. But this waiver for playoff eligibility, this ain't it, man. This is not it. There's a lot of things in this world or in this sport that you can change. That's the first thing you change because you're so insecure about your best driver racing in another event and he wasn't there for yours. It's pathetic. Article of this evening, the BWB article of the week is going to be a new provisional spot added to NASCAR Cup Field, damaged vehicle policy reversed, and all of that article is courtesy of Zach Albert on NASCAR.com. We didn't get through the full article. Wanted to condense it, wanted to basically talk opinion, wanted to lay it out with you on air. We will be posting that article online on our Facebook page probably sometime this week, so you can enjoy it and read it through as well. So, all right, let's get into our big ticket item this evening, big ticket conversation this evening, and that's going to be our, like I said, we have a series of events going on each episode, each week. We're going to be doing previews for the 2025 season, going with manufacturers going into the new season. This week, just because I was at the Eagles game on Sunday night to watch them beat the Green Bay Packers and did not have enough time for homework on a bigger manufacturer teams like Ford and Chevrolet, this is why we're starting off with Team Toyota this week. So Team Toyota race preview is going to be tonight's topic of conversation. If you're listening to us live on our YouTube channel, feel free to drop some chats. Feel free to drop some texts and would love to hear what you have to say about some of our predictions. And maybe we can just discuss back and forth a little bit on what you're thinking as well, the fan. So Team Toyota race preview for 2025. The first one up on the board is going to be Legacy Motor Club on our race preview. Year number 2 with Toyota, Legacy Motor Club is this year. Both Eric Jones and John Hunter Nemechek will be returning in 2025 to the 43 and the 42. I'm going to start off with John Hunter Nemechek because I think John Hunter Nemechek to me is a little bit of an interesting driver going into the season. I don't think we saw a lot, but what we did see kind of piqued my interest a little bit. I'm not saying he's going to be a great driver. I'm not saying that at all. I I do like the idea of maybe what he could become with the ceiling as a prospect. So John Hunter Nemechek in 2025, Travis Mack will be his crew chief. He came over from Trackhouse Racing. I believe Travis Mack was with Daniel Suarez in 2021, 2022, and 2023. So Travis Mack will be with John Hunter Nemechek entering 2025. 2025 sponsorships on the 42 car, according to jski.com. Well, they're going to be returning the Dollar Tree Family Dollar brand. They got Mobile One, Albertsons, Safeway, Acme, Romco Equipment, Avon Health, and DriveValue.com. So those will be your main sponsorships on the 42 in 2025. Well, let's talk about what he did in 2024 and what we expect in 2025 based on some data. 2024 stat line for John Hunter Nemechek. He had a 25.41 average finish with 4 top 10s, 0 top 5s, 6 DNFs, and 36 laps led. Key highlights from me in 2025. There was a few of them. There actually was. I mean, I know I had some people reach out to me in some of the races. They're like, man, Corey LaJoie or John Hunter Nemechek or Harrison Burton are the only ones that ever spin in a race. But there were some key highlights for John Hunter Nemechek. We're going to kick things off with this first key highlight, and that was at the 2024 Food City 500, where he finished sixth in that race. Qualified 26. Now, granted, there was a lot of tire wear issues in that race. They didn't know they didn't know how to manage the tires to start the race. So people like John Hunter Nemechek could probably jump into the field as quickly as possible because of the situation with the tires. But qualified 26 in the race, finished stage 1 and 5th, and then finished stage 2 and 4th. As a whole, this was his best race in 2024, what he did down in Bristol. There's not many great races, so looking through his driver logs and through the stats, through the data, this was the top performance of him in 2024. Another race that pops in my mind outside the Food City 500 was the Brickyard 400. Disappointing finish. He did finish 29th in that race due to a wreck. But at the Brickyard, he qualified 10th for the race, finished stage 2 and 5th, and led 16 total laps in that race. There was a lot that went wrong for John Hunter Nemechek in 2024. I'm not going to say he was an elite driver by any stretch because he was not. And we'll give you some data on why. We did see some flashes, though, of potential. And the key word, potential. The one issue I had with John Hunter Nemechek was he had 15 finishes of 30th or worse in 2024. So 41% of the races that John Hunter Nemechek ran in, he finished 30th or worse. It's nearly 50%. That's not good. Another scary fact was that even though we saw potential at very few times from John Hunter Nemechek, again, Bristol, probably Indy, I know he finished the Daytona 500 in 7th. There wasn't a lot, but we saw some flashes. He had a 6th place finish at Vegas, which was a really good finish for that organization. The problem with John Hunter Nemechek, though, like I said, the scariest fact was he only had 7 finishes of 20th or better. That's it. 20th or better. Only 19% of his finishes went above 20th place in 2024. There's a lot to get. He's got a lot of work to get going. I do like the move with Travis Mack. I think that's going to be a pretty decent combination. I know that Legacy kind of had some issues with crew chiefs. Ben Bayshore is a good crew chief. I'm not going to disregard Ben Bayshore at all. I think he's a good crew chief. My problem is that I think Ben Bayshore, obviously Legacy wants to help out Eric Jones, and we'll talk about Eric Jones in a minute. So bringing in Travis Mack is someone that could, hopefully put John Hunter Nemechek into better positions, right? I feel like John Hunter Nemechek's first season at Legacy was very similar to like the Daniel Suarez Gaunt Brothers racing season in 2020, the early Trackhouse 2021, where Daniel Suarez showed us flashes of potential, especially 2021 with Trackhouse. Organization was not really there yet. Daniel Suarez was still a good driver. He showed flashes, showed potential where it was enough to be like, all right, well, how do we get this to the next level? That's where I feel like Travis Mack could get John Hunter Nemechek. Let's try to get John Hunter Nemechek almost to a 2022 Daniel Suarez-esque season. So a lot of work to be cut out. The finishes have to be 41. You got to eliminate the 41% of finishes below 30th place. You just have to. And then hopefully they can start raising the numbers up where it starts becoming a more productive season in 2025. All right, let's go to his teammate, Erik Jones. As mentioned, Travis Mack goes to John Hunter Nemechek. Well, Ben Bayshore gets moved over to the 43 team in Erik Jones in 2025. 2025 sponsorships. Again, all 2025 sponsorships in tonight's episode are going to be sponsored by jski.com. We don't need to go through that every single sentence that I wrote. But 2025 sponsorships for Erik Jones. Well, Advent Health, Family Dollar, Dollar Tree, and Allegiant. Let's talk about Erik Jones in 2024, though. He ended up finishing the regular season point standings in 28th, and his 2024 stat line for his Erik Jones was a 2020 or 22.19 average finish, 1 top 5, 2 top 10s, 0 laps led the whole season, and 3 DNFs. When I read this stat that he led 0 laps in 2024, I had to double check 3, 4, 5 different sources to make sure that was correct. It is nearly impossible unless you are like Cody Ware. Sorry, Cody Ware. But unless you're like Cody Ware or some of these like really bottom feeder teams that just show up to like the Beard Motorsports team, like that is nearly impossible to do as a full-time driver. Unless you're in really bad equipment. And I get it, Legacy has not been lighting the world on fire, but Legacy, you can't leave one lap in a Legacy Motorsports car. Even when everyone's pitting, just to lead one lap. 2024 was a massive failure for Erik Jones. There's no way to put it. Massive failure. I get that he got hurt at Talladega, and that video to me was very, very brutal. Absolutely brutal. Listening to him talk on the radio, you could definitely tell he was hurt. And I don't want to even say like, he wrecked. Terrible incident. And he did miss 2 races because of the injury. But 1 top 5 and 2 top 10s, which occurred at the Daytona 500 and the Talladega Fall Race. That's where his top 5 and top 10 came from. Those 2 races. What was the wildest stat for me, like I just told you? Erik Jones led 0 laps in 2024. 0. I feel like in today's NASCAR that is completely and nearly impossible to do, especially in an organization that does have high tier support. Another issue for me though for Erik Jones, similar to his teammate, but another issue for me for Erik Jones was finding ways to put his car in the top 20. I felt like for me with Erik Jones in 2022, 2023, and like 2022, he ended up winning that race. And I just felt like his car was a top 20 car in 2022. But in 2024, he had issues putting that car in the top 20. 19 total finishes of 20th or worse, and 7 finishes of 30th or worse in 2024 for Erik Jones. Erik Jones has to clean up so much of the issues that he had in 2024 in order to be competitive in 2025. Those numbers for Legacy Motor Club this past season were totally unacceptable. What is my prediction for Legacy Motor Club in 2025? Excuse me, I want to say 2024 so bad, but 2025. What is my prediction? 0 wins. 0 wins. I don't see either one of these drivers win a race. Now, again, this is a prediction, so I'm going to tell you right now, go to a casino, if you're listening live, go place money that Eric Jones is going to win the Daytona 500 or John Hunter Nemechek, because I just said they're not going to win a race this year. Um, in all honesty, though, I don't see any wins. But for me, I think that what Legacy Motor Club needs to focus on the most, first of all, like I just said with Travis Mack. Travis Mack, I feel like, is coming into a situation with John Hunter Nemechek very similar to what Daniel Suarez was the first year of Trackhouse Racing. We have to build a culture. We have to build an establishment. We have to get you into the top 20. They're not automatically going to start winning races. Now, I get it, super speedway races, they're outliers. Anyone can win those races. But is that what you want to be known as? A super speedway ace? Which there's nothing wrong with that. Plenty of drivers did it. But as two drivers like Eric Jones and John Hunter Nemechek, it's you got to build an establishment. You got to build a culture. Right now, Legacy, to me, I think Legacy Motor Clubs might be the most lost organization in all of NASCAR. I was I was so high on Legacy Motor Club after Eric Jones won the Southern 500 in 2022. But it's what I saw from him leading up to that, right? Out in California, in Fontana earlier that year, we saw Eric Jones put the car up in the front. And I'm like, okay, this is great. This is awesome. Maybe finally Richard Petty bringing on the GMS part of that organization. They're finally going to put a car that's competitive. Then they win the Southern 500, and then it's like 2023 comes around. You had Noah Gragson, Jimmy Johnson comes on board. I'm like, okay, you know what? This may be an organization that's not a championship contender, but maybe one of their cars make the playoffs. And then you hear during the 2023 season, well, they're going to be leaving Chevrolet. Okay, well, where are they going? Toyota. Oh, perfect. David Wilson's going to be shoveling more money into different organizations and building the program up. I was completely wrong on what they did last year. Completely wrong. But for 2025, and again, this is an organization to me that's so afraid to leave the analytics behind. And I'm an analytics guy, and I think everyone that listens to this podcast knows that I love analytics. But I feel like Legacy is so analytical based that they don't trust their guts anymore. There's so many winners in that organization. I mean, you got Matt Kenseth who's in the organization. You got Jimmy Johnson who's part owner. I mean, clearly we don't even need to tell you who the main owner is. Richard Petty. And it's like you put this product on the track and you got like you're going to get better support from Toyota. So for me, for Legacy in 2025, and I'll repeat this one more time, they need to find ways to get better. You need to find ways to build the foundation. Right now, you have a house that's sitting on mud. You have a house that is completely sitting on mud and it's collapsed. You got to learn how to rebuild it, but you got to learn how to rebuild it from the ground up. And what does that do for both drivers? Well, first, Travis Mack and Ben Bayshore better be in the driver competition means basically telling Eric Jones and John Hunter Nemechek, you both need to learn how to drive in the top 20 first. And then maybe we can start talking about winning. Bold prediction in 2025, Eric Jones is going to be on the hot seat. I know that the contract might be there and all that type of stuff. I have a strong feeling that Eric Jones could be on the hot seat after this season if he does not if he has the same performance he did in 2024, he'll be gone out of Legacy next year. Again, 0 wins for Legacy Motor Club. All right, let's hop to our next Toyota organization, and that is 23XI, which I think a lot of people in this sport love. And they also hate because they're probably the most polarizing team in all of NASCAR. They have the most polarizing owner. They have an NBA Hall of Famer as an owner. And then, of course, I don't even want to talk about the one driver that everyone wants to bitch and complain about. So we're going to kick things off with they do have a new driver lineup, by the way, at 23XI for this season. Tyler Reddick remains in the 45. Bubba Wallace remains in the 23. But Riley Herbst is joining the organization driving the new 35 car. I'm an aesthetics guy. I don't find 35 to be a really appealing number. I just don't. I get that Michael Jordan only wore 45 and 23, but I looked at 50. I looked at 35, and I'm like, you guys couldn't have found a way to get to 28? Maybe. I'm just saying. But Riley Herbst will be in the 35 car. Let's kick things off with the newest member of 23XI, and that's Riley Herbst. Uh, Davin Restivo is going to be the crew chief of this group in 2025. He came over from Stewart Haas Racing with Riley Herbst. That was Riley Herbst's crew chief down at the Xfinity level. Monster Energy will be the primary sponsor of the car. Again, all sponsorship updates according to jski.com. What's a little bit about Riley Herbst? His 2024 season was very interesting. I think a lot of fans wrote him. I mean, honestly, I know when Vince was on this show, I know he wrote him off back at the end of or in the beginning of 2024. I feel like a lot of people wrote him off halfway through 2023, but here we are. I mean, a year and a half later, he's in the Cup with a really rising organization. In 2024, though, Riley Herbst ran 4 races for Rick Ware Racing. Those finishes were 24th at Daytona, 35th at the spring race in Kansas, 37th at Nashville, and 33rd at Richmond. Average finish in a part-time Cup schedule for Rick Ware Racing was 32.25 average finish. So let's take it for a grain of salt, I guess you can say. It's Rick Ware Racing's second car essentially. It's a floater car. It's a rotational car. Daytona, it's a crapshoot. We already know that's probably the biggest outlier race on the schedule. That, Atlanta, and Talladega. Sprint of Kansas, like I said, you're in the Rick Ware Racing equipment. Same with Nashville and Richmond. So, again, his average finish in the 4 Cup races was 32.25. Clearly, Riley Herbst, though, his main focus in 2024 was in the Xfinity Series and chasing an Xfinity Series championship. His 2024 stat line in the Xfinity Series: 7th in the points, 14.8 average finish, 2 wins, 7 top 5s, 15 top 10s, 273 laps led, and 6 DNFs. His wins came at Indy and Phoenix to end the season. So this is what I believe in Riley Herbst. Riley Herbst had a good to great run in 2024 in the Xfinity Series. I don't think he was elite by any stretch, but I think he was a very good to great driver. He did. The 6 DNFs concerned me. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't go back in every single race in the Xfinity Series over the break and figure out if it was his fault or a mechanical issue. But the one thing I will say, like I said, he wasn't. It's not like he was elite. It's not like he went out there every single week and was like, "Damn, this guy's dominating." When he had a car to go win a race and be dominant, he was dominant. When he didn't, he was there. What do I expect from him in the Cup Series in 2025? Well, it's just learn how to race in the Cup, right? Just learn how to race in the Cup. We have not seen a rookie driver, in my mind, in a very long time come into the Cup Series, win races, and be successful off the bat. Personally, I think the last 2 rookies, I guess you could say, that have done that was Jimmy Johnson and Ryan Newman back in 2002, and that was almost 23 years ago. Right? Like, you don't see a lot. I mean, even Logano. I mean, I would say Harvick, but Johnson and Newman came in after Harvick. There's been a lot of rookies that have come in and they have struggled. The win rate. I mean, Chase Elliott might have been maybe the last one, but it does take a toll on young drivers to race in the Cup Series. It just does. So for Riley Herbst, he just needs to understand the race functions and dynamics and the wind velocity and the drafting of these cars. That's what he's got to learn this year. Where do I expect him to finish in the points? Probably 25th. I think I expect him at 25th, between 21st and 25th, somewhere around there. But as long as he comes out of this season looking like he understands like how this car operates, how this car drives, I think it's a very successful season for 23XI. You may see him in the top 10 in a couple races. You may see him in the top 5, maybe in one race. He does have the equipment to do it. But again, don't expect too much from Riley Herbst. Next driver up in the 23XI stable in this 2025 preview. Let's get to Bubba Wallace. Bubba has a new crew chief, for everyone that doesn't know. Booty Barker ends up moving within 23XI, left the door open for Charles DeNike. 2025 sponsors for Bubba Wallace this season are going to be McDonald's, Columbia, U.S. Air Force, Leidos, and Dr. Pepper. Jski.com and anyone who's listening, Jski.com, who I really do trust, they had Moneyline as a sponsor for both 23XI drivers of Reddick and Bubba Wallace. If I'm not mistaken, I thought Moneyline ended up leaving the sport. I thought I read something that they did. But if anyone who's listening, even if you're not listening to our live broadcast, feel free to reach out to us on the Brooklyn Wolverine Podcast Facebook page to confirm that. Let's talk about Bubba Wallace's 2024 season and what to expect in 2025. Bubba ended up finishing in the point standings in 18th. His 2024 stat line was 15.3 average finish, 6 top 10s, 14 top 5s, 139 laps led, and 3 DNFs. His 15.3 average finish was 12th best among Cup drivers in 2024 and was in the same range as Ryan Blaney, Ross Chastain, and Brad Keselowski for average finish. To me, Bubba Wallace improved in most categories in 2024, and the data doesn't lie. He ended up improving in his 2024 categories over his 2023 categories in multiple areas. The key ones were at his average finish was higher in 2024 than 2023. He had more top 5s in 2024 than 2023. He had more top 10s than 2024 in 2024 than 2023. The only category he did not improve on was laps led in 2024, where he only had 139 laps led, whereas in 2023 he led 285 laps. My expectation for Bubba Wallace in 2025, it's very simple. It's very simple for all my fans that are Bubba Wallace guys or anyone of this podcast. He's got to find victory lane. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He's got to find victory lane. He's got to get the car back in the playoffs. All the stats and the data look really good about his improvements in 2024 compared to what they were in 2023. But the difference, the biggest key takeaway stat for Bubba Wallace from 2023 and then 2024, Bubba made the playoffs in 2023. He made the round of 12 in 2023. He didn't make the playoffs in 2024. So the biggest takeaway for me is he has to find victory lane. Can he do it on super speedways? Sure, of course. Outlier race. What's his average finish in 2024 on super speedways? Well, that was a 15 flat. Pretty straight line down the middle. But the one thing before I get off Bubba Wallace that impressed me the most about him in 2024, his short track racing became much more improved. I know he was a short track guy growing up and going through the ranks. He won the race at Martinsville in the truck series for Kyle Busch Motorsports. But like I said, it was impressive for me because his average finish was 12.6 at short tracks with 3 top 5s and 3 top 10s. Again, all the stats I provided are completely great, but 23XI has officially showed you that they are a championship caliber team and that they can win consistently. He needs to find victory lane in 2025. Final driver on the 23XI stable. Let's get to Tyler Reddick. Driver number 3 in the 23XI stable and kind of the leader, in my opinion, in that garage. Returning with Reddick for year 3 is crew chief Billy Scott. So Billy Scott, Tyler Reddick, stay consistent. They're with each other going into another season. 2025 sponsors, McDonald's, Monster, and Jordan Brand. And man, do I love that Jordan Brand car more than anything. 2024, man. Let's talk about Tyler Reddick in 2024. Personally, kind of a breakout year. I say kind of. And not that he didn't break out. Of course he did. He had incredible stretches in his race in that season where it was like he's the greatest driver in the circuit right now. But then the playoffs came. And then he won. And then he didn't win the championship. But 2024 stat line to me with Reddick, 13.1 average finish with 3 wins, 12 top 5s, 21 top 10s, 597 laps led, and 4 DNFs. Not just was Reddick in a championship 4 appearance the most impressive from him, but for me, it was the way he got to the championship. He won the regular season points championship, as we mentioned. We didn't mention that. We just mentioned it, excuse me. But after winning the championship or regular season points championship, going into Homestead, he had an average finish of 20.7 in the playoffs. Was nearly eliminated at the Roval. And then he ended up getting that win at Homestead that put him into the championship 4. His Homestead win to me was a remarkable walk-off win. And if you do follow us on Facebook, I ended up posting a picture of his walk-off win at Homestead to Michael Jordan basically making a game-winning shot. That was NASCAR's version of what Michael did in the playoffs. That win was impressive because Billy Scott and him, honestly, they thought that their day was over after a pit strategy that didn't work out in their advantage, right? I actually thought it was over too for them. A few laps after they pitted, Kyle Larson spun for being aggressive to try to win the race, brought out the caution, put him right back into contention. That last lap pass from him on Ryan Blaney, like I said, was the equivalent of Michael Jordan hitting a game-winning shot against Cleveland in the playoffs. What are my 2025 expectations, though, for Tyler Reddick? Well, continue being the leader at 23XI. I think we're starting to see who the leader of that team or that organization is. Not saying Bubba Wallace isn't a leader. I don't want to hear that because I think Bubba can be a leader, but it's very difficult to. And Bubba does a lot of great things, but Tyler Reddick is winning races. So he's shown the organization how to win. And that's what I expect Tyler Reddick to do in 2025. Show the organization that you can continue to win races and make championship appearances. That should be your goal. And 2024, we saw massive stretches from Reddick that showed us why everyone was so high on him as a prospect in the future face of NASCAR, right? There was that stretch in the summer where he just was like top five after top five after top five after top five or top 10, you know? I think there was a couple more wins in the bucket for Tyler Reddick last year that I think that we don't discuss enough. Chicago Street Course comes to my mind. Turn 6, gets over aggressive, trying to chase down Alex Bowman, ends up hitting the wall, doesn't get the Bowman. Bowman ends up winning the race. And again, shoulda, woulda, coulda. Bowman still won the race. No doubt about it. But that's the first race that I think to my mind where it's like, damn, Nashville is another one last year. He just ran out of time on Joey Logano. So Tyler Reddick won 3 races last year. You probably could have been looking at a 5-6 time winner in 2024. So I expect Tyler Reddick to continue making that next step, continue being the leader of the organization, and continue to win races and compete for championship appearances with 23XI. All right. 23XI organization expectations and total team wins. I actually have 23XI winning 5 races in 2025. I feel like the organization has finally learned how to win, and seeing Tyler Reddick in the championship 4, I think it's going to create a more winning culture. And I could see 23XI, Tyler Reddick winning 4 races for them. I could see Bubba Wallace winning a race. Again, don't expect Riley Herbst to win a race with 23XI. I just expect Riley Herbst to just manage and maintain and just learn how to race at the cup level. So again, if you're just joining us, 4 races for Tyler Reddick, I expect to win. Bubba Wallace, I do expect to see a race win from him in 2025. And finally, our last Toyota race preview or Toyota team rate from the race. Excuse me, super exciting. But our final team in Toyota, and that's Joe Gibbs Racing. New driver lineup for Joe Gibbs Racing in 2025. The big news obviously came halfway through the season. Thank you, Christopher Bell. And then officially it was announced on the Olympic break. Chase Briscoe is going to be joining Joe Gibbs Racing this season in 19. Christopher Bell is going to be in the 20. Denny Hamlin returns in the 11. And Ty Gibbs obviously returns in the 54. So let's start off with Ty Gibbs. Driver of the 54 has a new crew chief in 2025, and that crew chief is Tyler Allen, who takes over the top of the pit box for Chris Gale. 2025 sponsors for Ty Gibbs is going to be Interstate Batteries, Monster Energy, He Gets Us, and SiriusXM. So no changes on the sponsorship aspects or the sponsorship sides of things for Ty Gibbs. Excuse me, I keep saying Tyler Reddick. Ty Gibbs. But let's talk about the 2024 season that Ty Gibbs just had and what to expect in 2025. So in 2024, Ty Gibbs' stat line, 17.14 average finish, 8 top 5s, 12 top 10s, 417 laps led, and 4 DNFs. I personally thought Ty Gibbs is 2024, his start was very strong. The biggest key highlight, for Ty Gibbs was Bristol. If you remember, it looked like he was going to completely dominate that race, and he was for a good portion of it. Unfortunately, I feel like he ended up mismanaging his tires, more so Chris Gale, which we'll talk about Chris Gale a lot in a minute. Um, I feel like they both mismanaged the tires, cost him his first win after winning stage 1 and 2. And to be honest with you, really felt like that was his race that he was going to lose. And he ended up losing it. The big thing about Ty Gibbs, though, he was able to make his first playoff appearance in 2024, but was knocked out in the round of 16. So made the playoffs, got the playoff, made the playoffs for the first time, get knocked out early. Now, in 2025, I'm going to say this. This is now year 3 we've seen Ty Gibbs up the Cup Series. I expect and I need more from Ty Gibbs. And what do I mean by that? I was not pleased with what I saw at the end of the season from the 54 team. Multiple DNFs, multiple bad finishes, and which to me kind of tanked a great season. Basically made a great season into a good season. Like if he ends up coming away with a couple top fives, top tens to close out the season, that's a pretty great season from Ty Gibbs. Instead, I thought it was a good season. It should have been much more improved. I can't blame him though because a lot of it was mechanical, but still, you gotta you gotta continue progressing to be better. I don't feel like I saw that from Ty Gibbs at the end of the season. His last 5 races in 2024, he had an average finish of 34.6 with no finishes above 30th. Considering the fact that he started the season off hot, it basically neglected everything he did in the beginning of the season. Granted, as I just mentioned, a lot of these finishes were not his fault. Some of them were mechanical, but if he continues to advance in the playoffs in 2025, him and his team need to be much better as the playoffs go along. I have a strong feeling, though, if you're a Ty Gibbs fan, I have a very strong feeling we will see a much different 54 team with the addition of Tyler Allen. I expect big things from Ty Gibbs this year. Next driver up from Joe Gibbs Racing, Denny Hamlin. Oh boy, I was talking to Trioval if he's listening, and he said maybe you should start. He's like, there's people out there that don't think that Denny Hamlin's a good driver because he didn't win a championship. I was thinking about starting the first episode 2025 saying that basically telling you why Denny Hamlin was a great driver, but instead we decided to go manufacturer previews for the 2025 season. The next driver up, though, like I mentioned, was Denny Hamlin. New year and new changes for the newest Ohio State Buckeyes fan, Denny Hamlin. And if you don't get that reference, that's fine. I'll tell you right now. So he had friends that are Ohio State fans, I think he said. He ended up going to the Ohio State game last week against Texas. So he was seen wearing Ohio State gear. So that's why the joke now is he's an Ohio State Buckeyes fan. So again, newest Ohio State Buckeyes fan, Denny Hamlin. First, let's talk about his new crew chief. That's Chris Gale. Chris Gale will be coming over from Ty Gibbs' team over to Denny Hamlin's team because Chris Gabehart ended up taking a job within Joe Gibbs Racing. I believe it's a director role of competition, similar to Chad Gnaus. So Chris Gale ended up making the move over with Denny Hamlin. That happened like late November. 2025 sponsorships: Mavis Discount Tires, Sports Clips, and Interstate Batteries. First year without FedEx, which in my opinion, nothing Denny could do. Frederick Smith was cutting back funding, but sucks to see such a familiar sponsorship leave the sport. Let's talk about Denny Hamlin though in 2024 to see what we expect in 2025. 2024 stat line, finished 8th in the 2024 standings, had a 13.88 average finish, which was 7th best among all drivers in the Cup Series. He had 3 wins, 12 top 5s, 18 top 10s, and 4 DNFs. Denny Hamlin got off to a massive fast start in 2024. Probably one of the best starts he's had in his career. Had 3 wins early in the season while winning the Clash. He called a shot, if you remember, he called a shot down at Dover, ended up winning at Dover. After the Dover race, ends up calling a shot to go win the championship in 2024. But unfortunately, it turned into another year, same result for Hamlin. After Gateway, I will say this: I truly didn't believe he was going to win the championship. If you look at his stat line going in after Gateway was completed, he was leading the points at one point because of how good he was. Um, but a roller coaster esque summer with no wins going into the playoffs kind of left the cupboard bare for Denny Hamlin, which we're not accustomed to because he wins a lot. He's won a lot of races with him and Chris Gabehart with Chris Gabehart as his crew chief. He also faced the penalty for an engine entering Daytona. If you remember, he had that engine. The Toyota didn't report it to NASCAR. It was the engine that won Bristol, and so ended up basically taking off playoff points. So that kind of killed him in the playoffs. It does kind of suck though because if that penalty doesn't happen, Denny's playoffs were not terrible by any stretch. He had an average finish of 11 flat, but the lack of wins and the penalty killed any championship hopes for Denny Hamlin. Now, my question to the audience tonight: did the message get stale with him and Chris Gabehart? With Chris Gabehart as his crew chief, did the message get stale? I'm going to say maybe. But I truly do not believe that Chris Gale is the answer for Denny Hamlin to win his first championship. I don't think Hamlin wins a championship in 2025. And quite frankly, I think that he may take a step back. And the reason why is because I think Chris Gale is a good, I will say this, I think Chris Gale is a good crew chief. I do. I think that he's a good crew chief. I don't think he's elite. I think he's very conservative. And I think that he's very good at developing young drivers. I think he did a nice job with Eric Jones. I think he did a nice job with Ty Gibbs. And I just think that that's what the ceiling's going to be. I think someone where Denny Hamlin is at in his life and in his career, he's going to be 45 this season. Some of these drivers start going off of an age cliff at this point in their careers. I think that Denny Hamlin needed somebody to push him, similar to Chris Gabehart. They needed to find somebody like that. But instead, they end up bringing Chris Gale, who might be one of the best conservative developers. I just don't see this marriage working out whatsoever. And it could feel very similar to what Jimmy Johnson was dealing with back in 2019 before Cliff Daniels came on board. Driver number 3 in the JGR stable we're going to talk about, Christopher Bell. The most stable and no changes driver in the JGR stable. Adam Stevens returns in 2025 with C-Bell, both going into year 5 together. I remember when they made the announcement that Adam Stevens was going to Christopher Bell in 2021 after Kyle Busch, and I'm like, there's no way they're going to let Kyle Busch hang off of a cliff like that. Man, like the years just keep coming, man. But Adam Stevens and Christopher Bell return for year 5 together. 2025 sponsorships. Well, DeWalt, Rheem, Yahoo, and Interstate Batteries. So no changes there on sponsorships. And now let's talk about what happened in 2024 to see what we expect in 2025. 2024 stat line: 12.08 average finish with 3 wins, 15 top 5s, 23 top 10s, 1,145 laps led, and 6 DNS for Christopher Bell. So the car was in the front a lot in 2024. For him to only get 3 wins with that many laps led and with how many races we run in a season, yeah, the probability kind of went the opposite way in Christopher Bell's instance. Christopher Bell, to me, though, in 2024 was sensational and showcased a lot of potential NASCAR fans were looking for. The problem with Christopher Bell in 2024 was that 2 drivers below the cut line won in the round of 8. That's what killed him. And also the 6 DNFs. Christopher Bell was remarkable in the 2024 playoffs, by the way. He had an total average finish in 10 playoff races at 7.1. Unfortunately, though, NASCAR deemed his move at the end of the Martinsville race a Hail Melon attempt and regulated him at 22nd, which gave enough points for William Byron, which, again, that could be another issue, and there was suspensions from it because Chevrolet, it seemed like, ordered Austin Dillon and Ross Chastain to make a blockade so no one passes for points to get past William Byron in the point standings. What I expect from Christopher Bell, though, in 2025 I expect a big win total. I do. As I just said, his car was in the front a lot this past season. 1,145 laps led. That's courtesy of NASCAR.com. Clearly, like I said, that car was in the front. And for him to only win 3 races, that's kind of an outlier within itself when you look at the data and the stats. Um, Christopher Bell has won on multiple style tracks. He has a crew chief that's been with him since 2021, so there's a lot of chemistry there now. Also, he's back to dirt racing again. And congratulations to Christopher Bell on the Chili Bowl win a couple weeks ago. I could see Christopher Bell having a Kyle Larson 2021 type season. Multiple wins, big win total, just cruise right to the championship race. The dude has been knocking on the door for a championship over the past 3 seasons. 2025 is the time, and I expect I might pick Christopher Bell as my preseason champion this season. So, the final driver of the Joe Gibbs race, and that we're going to take a preview on, is Chase Briscoe. So Chase Briscoe comes over due to the Stewart-Haas Racing closing. Briscoe comes over to the 19 team after Martin Truex Jr. ends up retiring. James Small was retained as crew chief for the 19 team. Chase Briscoe kept all of Martin Truex Jr.'s sponsorships as well. Bass Pro Shop stays on board. Auto Owners Insurance stays on board. Research, Fine Foods, Interstate Batteries. And I thought, and again, if you're listening live, feel free, or if you're not and you listen to the episode, Broken Wheel Brand Podcast on Facebook, I thought Mahindra Trucks went over with Chase Briscoe. I thought they did as well for like a race or something. I thought I read that somewhere. Again, could be completely wrong, but jski.com has Bass Pro Shops, Auto Owners Insurance, Research Fine Food, and Interstate Batteries. Now let's talk about what Briscoe did in 2024 so we can get a good glimpse of maybe what he could be doing in 2025. So Briscoe ended up finishing 14th in the point standings. He ended up making the playoffs and made it all the way to the round of 12. He had a pretty good run the first 3 races of the playoffs. It almost felt like it was going to be like the underdog story. Like, here it is, Stewart-Haas Racing at the end of their lifespan. They're going to be there for the race, to win the championship. But Briscoe was knocked out in the round of 12. He had an average finish of 18.8 with 1 win, 9 top 10s, 3 top 5s, 5 DNFs, and only 43 laps led. And for a while, we thought that Kyle Busch was going to pass him down Darlington. Did not. But so with all that being said with Chase Briscoe, what do I expect from Briscoe? Well, I feel like if you mold his 2024 stats and you mold Martin Truex Jr. stats together. So Truex actually last year had an average finish of 17.4, where Briscoe had an 18.8. I'm starting to think that you're probably going to find something in the middle, somewhere around between what Truex averaged last year and what Briscoe averaged last year. Truex ended up having 5 top 10s last year. Briscoe had 3. I can kind of meld that. I mean, they're very similar in top 5s. Top 10s, again, very similar. Truex had 11 last year in 2024. Briscoe had 9 in 2024. And then, of course, top 20s. Truex ended up having 21 top 20s, while Briscoe ended up having 19. So they were pretty much only a couple averages off of each other. But that's probably what I expect from Briscoe. So Briscoe probably will raise his average finish. Briscoe's probably going to lead a lot more laps than he's going to lead more than 43 laps, in my opinion. But I don't know what to expect from Briscoe. I know Joe Gibbs Racing is very high on him. I know that they have talked about how Briscoe could be what Martin Truex Jr. was when he was floating around after stints with DEI and stints with Michael Waltrip Racing and French Row. They feel like there's a parallel somewhere in that as well. They might be right. They could be right. Do I see that with Briscoe? I mean, it's hard to say. I don't want to say yes, but I don't want to say no. I think that Briscoe is going to be a good driver. I think he could be a good to great driver. I don't think he's going to be elite. Look, there's a lot of drivers that win a lot of races in the Xfinity Series. There's no knock on that whatsoever either. There's a lot of drivers that are very successful in the Xfinity Series. But what I will say is that just because you're successful at the Xfinity Series still doesn't translate over to the Cup Series. And that's where I feel like Briscoe could be. Now, as he has said multiple times, his attitude's really upbeat. He goes, "This is the best equipment I've ever been in," all that type of stuff. So I guess when I look at the parallels and I look at the lines, I'm like, okay, with Chase Briscoe, I mean, Stewart Haas Racing was really, it was basically like Old Yeller, putting Old Yeller in the backyard. I mean, they were on their last leg. I mean, he still won a race with them last year when basically the whole team checked out. So I do expect big things. It's the best equipment he's probably ever going to be in. Well, it's definitely the best equipment he's been in. Might be the best equipment he's ever been in or will ever be in. I do like how JGR retained James Small for him. So I could see, like you said, or as he said, I mean, there could be a lot of parallels. There could be to what Truex was in his career. I don't know. I do expect to see Briscoe in Victory Lane though next year. I do. So with all that being said, let's get into the JGR final totals and final expectations. 2025 expectations and wins for me for JGR. I think that JGR, to personally, JGR, I believe, is in a transitional period of their organization. JGR reminds me of what 2018, 2019 Hendrick Motorsports was. There's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of, change. They're getting younger. They ran this wave of the veteran drivers for such a long time. Um, Christopher Bell's been there for a while now, so it's starting to seem like it's going to be his team at JGR with Ty Gibbs, Chase Briscoe. While Hamlin's still there, I think Hamlin's kind of going to be like, listen, I'm going to, if I don't win a championship, like I'm going to be venturing off into my own shit. So I do believe that this is a transitional year. I don't expect JGR to have all four drivers basically compete for a championship. All four in the playoffs, for sure. All four compete for a championship, no. Too much of a transitional year. But I do expect this group of drivers to win a total of 10 races. Right now, I marked down before tonight's episode, I have 5 wins for Christopher Bell. I have 2 wins for Denny Hamlin. I have 2 for Chase Briscoe, and I do believe Ty Gibbs gets that first career win in 2025. Um, I believe Christopher Bell is going to, by the end of the season, he's going to assert himself as the leader of the group. I believe that he's going to be the guy that they're going to lean on and kind of build the organization around, because I think at this point in all their career paths, not what they've done, I'm not talking about that. In all their career paths and where they're at in their career, I believe that Christopher Bell, in my mind, is probably the best driver in that stable at this point. I do. So I do believe that Christopher Bell will assert himself by the end of the season as the leader at JGR. But the one prediction I have, and I did mention this for anyone jumping on and finally finishing up the episode, I did mention this about Denny Hamlin. I think he takes a step back in 2025. I do. I don't think Chris Gale is the right. I don't think Chris Gale is the right crew chief for Denny Hamlin at this point in his career. Um, I think Gale, again, he's very conservative. He develops a lot of good drivers, or he develops young drivers, but he's very conservative. I think Hamlin needed somebody like a Booty Barker to go into that organization to go win them the championship. Just go out with a bang and go win the damn championship. I feel like they went with the wrong crew chief. But part of me is also thinking that maybe Hamlin did have a little say, considering the fact that his crew chief was removed from him to be director of competition over at JGR. But with all that being said, we will see what happens with all these Toyota drivers. So all the predictions I basically just told you tonight, I would say go to the casino and bet against everything that's just said. Christopher Bell probably ain't going to get 5 wins. No, I'm kidding. But that's all my predictions for tonight. That's the Toyota manufacturer preview for 2025. As I'm saying, we've got a couple more weeks of this with Chevrolet. We got a couple, Chevrolet and Ford coming up. Please join us on our YouTube channel at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. Follow us on TikTok, at the Broken Wheel Bearing Pod. Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, we're all on there. And again, like I said, if you love listening to all of us, if you love listening to me talk, you love listening, want to chat NASCAR, like I said, feel free to hop on our live YouTube channel. You can chat with me during the episode, and we could just sit there and banter back and forth. Again, appreciate everyone. Appreciate all the love and the support. We go into year 3 of this. I think the first episode of this season kicked off very well. I'm looking forward to being with you all season long. We are back, baby. Green flag out on 2025. We'll chat next Tuesday. We'll be with you live next Tuesday. We may have a surprise announcement later this week. Stay tuned to the Broken Woodbury Podcast Facebook page for that. With all that being said, enjoy yourself, be safe, be healthy. Again, once again, happy new year to everybody. If you're down in the south, if you're listening to us down in the south, be safe during the snow. I think a lot of it has melted by now. That was a little bit of a surprise, but again, appreciate everyone's love, support, and we'll chat next week. Have a wonderful night. Talk to you soon. Checker flag on tonight's episode. Good night.